You lace up your sneakers, step outside, and tell yourself today is the day. You're going to crush those 10,000 steps. You've seen it everywhere, heard it from every fitness guru, read it in every health article. Walk more, burn calories, lose weight. It's simple, right? Just move your body and the fat will melt away. But here's the brutal truth nobody wants to tell you. The reality that would collapse the entire fitness industry if everyone understood it. You can walk every single day for 6 months straight, hit your step goal religiously, feel incredible about your dedication, and still look in the mirror to see the exact same belly staring back at you. Not because you're lazy, not because you lack discipline, but because your body, at the deepest biological level, isn't getting the signals it needs to actually burn that stubborn fat you desperately want gone. You're moving, yes. You're technically burning calories. Your fitness tracker is celebrating your effort with colorful graphs and encouraging notifications, but those calories aren't coming from where you think they are. They're not coming from the places you actually care about. Your body is an absolute masterpiece of survival engineering, refined over millions of years to keep you alive through famines, droughts, and food scarcity. When you walk casually, comfortably, at a pace where you could easily scroll through your phone or chat with a friend without even breaking your rhythm, your body interprets this as low-priority movement. It's efficient, it's economical, it burns the absolute bare minimum fuel necessary to get the job done. And that fuel? It's almost always the glucose floating around in your bloodstream from whatever you ate an hour ago, the toast from breakfast, the snack you grabbed mid-morning. Your body has zero reason to dig into its emergency energy reserves when there's perfectly good, quick-burning fuel readily available right there in your system. This is what cutting-edge exercise scientists are now calling junk miles. Movement that feels productive, that makes you feel accomplished, that gives you that dopamine hit when you check your stats at the end of the day, but metabolically accomplishes almost nothing in terms of actual body transformation. But here's where everything changes, where the science gets absolutely fascinating. By making specific, precise, strategic adjustments to how you walk, not just that you walk, but exactly how you execute each step, how you breathe, how you pace yourself, how you time these sessions relative to your body's metabolic state, you can actually triple or even quadruple the rate at which your body burns fat. You can transform walking from a gentle calorie-burning hobby into a precise metabolic weapon that forces your body to switch fuel sources entirely, from a sugar-burning machine that just cycles through your last meal into a fat-burning furnace that has no choice but to dig deep into those stubborn reserves you've been trying to eliminate for years. This isn't about walking more. It's not about adding extra miles or spending more hours on your feet. It's about walking smarter. It's about understanding the biological mechanisms that govern which fuel your body chooses to burn, and then deliberately manipulating those mechanisms in your favor. Today, we're going to completely decode what I call the Fat Max Protocol, a strategic approach to walking that most people never discover. We're going to explore why walking at one very specific speed burns dramatically more belly fat than running ever could. We're going to uncover how to use strategic microbursts of effort to shock your metabolism into releasing stored fat without triggering the stress hormones that would normally shut down the entire fat-burning process. And we're going to dive deep into the biochemistry that explains why marathon runners who log 60 miles a week can still struggle with belly fat, while smart, strategic walkers get progressively leaner month after month without the joint damage or exhaustion. To really understand why this matters, why the way you walk determines whether you burn belly fat or just waste your time, you need to understand that your body operates like a hybrid engine. This is absolutely fundamental. You have two primary fuel sources available at any given moment. The first is glucose, which is sugar, quick-burning, fast-access energy that your body can convert into usable fuel almost instantly. The second is free fatty acids, which is fat, slower burning, more abundant, the energy source your body stores in massive quantities, specifically for situations where food might not be available for extended periods. The fuel your body chooses to burn at any given moment isn't random, it's not a preference, it's determined entirely by two critical factors: oxygen availability and perceived stress level. When you sprint, when you run hard, when you push yourself into that zone where you're gasping for air and your heart is hammering against your rib cage, your body essentially panics. It needs ATP, that cellular energy currency, and it needs it right now. So it switches to glucose because sugar can burn fast without requiring much oxygen. But this rapid burning creates a metabolic byproduct called lactate, and here's where the biochemistry becomes absolutely critical, where everything changes. Lactate is one of the most powerful inhibitors of fat burning that exists in human physiology. When lactate levels in your blood begin to rise, when that burning sensation starts flooding your muscles during intense exercise, it chemically shuts the doors to your fat cells at the molecular level. Your fat tissue stops releasing fatty acids because your body interprets high lactate as a crisis situation. It's dealing with metabolic stress, managing acid buildup, and has no bandwidth to also coordinate the slower process of mobilizing and burning fat. So when you're running hard, panting and sweating and pushing through that discomfort, you've biochemically locked your fat stores. Yes, you're burning calories. Your tracker shows impressive numbers, but you're burning the wrong calories. You're burning glucose and glycogen, sugar stores. The belly fat you want to eliminate remains completely untouched because the metabolic environment you've created has made it biochemically impossible to access. Now contrast that with what happens when you walk at a very specific intensity, a zone that exercise physiologists call Zone 2. Your heart rate stays relatively low, you're breathing steadily but not gasping. Your body recognizes there's no crisis, no danger. Oxygen is abundant, delivery is smooth and consistent, so your metabolism makes a completely different fuel choice. It chooses the slow burning option. It chooses to metabolize pure body fat, because in this relaxed, oxygen-rich state, there's no reason not to. You might burn fewer total calories per minute walking compared to running. The numbers on your tracker might look less impressive, but the percentage of those calories coming directly from stored body fat, from visceral adipose tissue, from that belly fat you're trying to eliminate, is exponentially, dramatically higher. This is the paradox most people never understand. Sometimes burning fewer calories total means burning more fat specifically, if those calories are coming from the right source. So how do we optimize this? How do we deliberately manipulate our walking to maximize this fat-burning state? The first key is what I call talk-test velocity. Most people walk too leisurely when they exercise. They stroll, they meander, they treat it like a gentle, restorative activity, which it can be, but that's not what maximizes visceral fat loss. To force your body to actually dig into those fat stores, you need to find the upper limit of Zone 2. You need to ride that precise edge right before lactate begins to accumulate in meaningful amounts. You don't need expensive heart rate monitors or complicated calculations. You just need to pay attention to your breathing and your ability to speak. The rule is devastatingly simple, but incredibly effective. You should be walking fast enough that you can still speak in full, complete sentences, but you absolutely cannot sing. If you can whistle along to your music, if you could comfortably have a phone conversation without the person knowing you're exercising, you're walking too slowly. You're in Zone 1. It feels nice, meditative, relaxing, but it's not creating enough metabolic demand to force your body to empty those fat cells. On the flip side, if you're gasping for air, if you can only grunt out 1 or 2 words at a time before needing to breathe, you're walking too fast. You've crossed that lactate threshold. Your body has switched fuels. You're now burning primarily sugar and raising cortisol, that stress hormone that actually promotes belly fat storage when chronically elevated. What you want is to be right on the edge. You want to feel a slight air hunger, a gentle demand for oxygen that signals to your mitochondria, those little power plants inside your cells, that they need to work at maximum efficiency to convert oxygen and fat into usable energy. This is the sweet spot where visceral fat melts. The second key is what I call undulating rhythm, and it involves strategic microintervals. Here's a fundamental truth about human physiology. Your body is an adaptation machine. It's constantly trying to become more efficient at whatever you repeatedly ask it to do. If you walk at the exact same pace on the exact same route for the exact same duration day after day, your body learns. It adapts. It figures out how to burn fewer and fewer calories to accomplish that same task. Your metabolism down-regulates. Movement that used to require significant energy expenditure becomes almost effortless. This is wonderful for survival, but for fat loss, it's a disaster. We don't want efficiency, we want expenditure. We want our body to be slightly confused, slightly challenged, always working just a bit harder than it expects to. To prevent this metabolic adaptation, you're going to vary your walking speed in a very specific pattern. Walk at your normal talk test pace, that zone 2 sweet spot, for 3 minutes. Then for 1 minute, just one single minute, walk as fast as you possibly can without breaking into a jog. This is the power walk phase. You're pumping your arms, lengthening your stride, moving with real intensity. Then return to your normal pace for another 3 minutes. Then 1 minute fast, then 3 minutes normal. This pattern repeats throughout your entire walk. Why does this work so effectively? That 1-minute power walking burst releases a small controlled pulse of hormones called catecholamines into your bloodstream, specifically norepinephrine and adrenaline. These hormones have one very specific job when it comes to fat metabolism. They tell your fat cells to open up. They signal adipose tissue to release stored fat into circulation. But here's the brilliant part. Because this burst only lasts 1 minute, you don't accumulate enough lactate to trigger that fat-burning shutdown we talked about earlier. You get the mobilization signal without the inhibition effect. Then when you slow back down to your steady pace for those 3 minutes, your body takes all those newly released fatty acids floating in your bloodstream and burns them. It oxidizes them for fuel. You're using the fast intervals to unlock and mobilize the fat, and you're using the steady intervals to actually combust it. It's a pump and burn mechanism that keeps your metabolism constantly guessing, constantly adapting without ever triggering the chronic stress response that comes from traditional high-intensity interval training. The third key addresses something most people completely ignore, and it's called biomechanical engagement through deliberate arm swing. Watch people walking in any park or on any sidewalk. What are their arms doing? Usually nothing. They're hanging limply at their sides, shoved in pockets, or clutching a phone while scrolling mindlessly as the legs do all the work. This completely disconnects the upper body from the movement. It turns walking into a legs-only activity when it should be a full-body metabolic event. To force maximum fat loss, to create the highest possible energy demand, we need to recruit as much muscle mass as possible. The more muscle fibers you actively engage during movement, the higher your oxygen consumption, and the more fat you're forced to burn to meet that demand. When you step forward with your left leg, your right arm should swing forward in opposition. This creates rotation through your spine. It activates your obliques, those side abdominal muscles. It engages your lats, those large back muscles. It fires up the fascial connections in your core that stabilize your entire torso. By actively, vigorously pumping your arms as you walk, you can increase the total caloric expenditure by up to 20%. But more importantly than the raw calorie burn, you activate the lymphatic system throughout your upper body. Lymph doesn't have a pump like blood does. It relies on muscular contraction to move. By engaging your arms and shoulders, you're helping drain inflammation, supporting immune function, turning what could be a simple leg exercise into a comprehensive full-body movement. Put the phone in your pocket. Use your arms. Turn every walk into a coordinated whole-body event. The fourth key is what I call the appetite advantage, and it addresses a problem that most people completely ignore without even realizing it's happening. When you perform high-intensity cardio, when you run hard or do aggressive interval training, your body perceives a massive, sudden energy deficit. You've burned through hundreds of calories in a relatively short period, and your survival mechanisms immediately kick in. Your hypothalamus, this ancient part of your brain responsible for regulating energy balance, releases a potent hunger hormone. This creates what researchers call the compensation effect. You burn 500 calories running, feel accomplished, feel like you've earned a reward, and then come home absolutely ravenous. You eat 600 calories, maybe 700, maybe more, often without even realizing how much you're consuming, because your brain is biochemically forcing you to refuel. You think you've created a calorie deficit, you think you're in fat-burning mode, but biologically, you've completely offset the energy expenditure, sometimes even exceeded it. This is why so many people exercise religiously but never lose weight. They're trapped in this compensation cycle. Walking is metabolically unique because it's what scientists call appetite neutral. Multiple studies have demonstrated that low-intensity exercise, like strategic walking, does not significantly spike those hunger hormones. It doesn't trigger that same desperate hunger response. Why not? Because walking, even when done at that fat max zone 2 intensity, burns calories without triggering the biological alarm bell that screams famine to your brain. Your body interprets it as normal, sustainable movement, not as a crisis that requires immediate refueling. To maximize this appetite advantage, you need to ensure you're breathing through your nose as much as possible during your walk. Nasal breathing keeps you in the parasympathetic nervous system state, that rest and digest mode, which keeps hunger hormones stable and regulated. When you start panting through your mouth, when you're gasping for air, you signal sympathetic activation, stress, and stress signals hunger. Your body links the two. By walking at the right intensity and breathing correctly, you create a genuine calorie deficit, a real energy expenditure that your brain doesn't feel compelled to immediately replace. This is the only type of deficit that's actually sustainable long-term. This is how fat loss happens without suffering. The fifth and final key is what I call the empty tank strategy, and it specifically applies to morning walkers, people who can exercise before eating breakfast. When you wake up in the morning, assuming you haven't eaten anything for 8 to 12 hours, your insulin levels are at their lowest point of the day. Low insulin is absolutely critical for fat burning because insulin, when elevated, directly blocks the release of fatty acids from fat tissue. So mornings are already advantageous, but if you add caffeine, specifically black coffee or green tea consumed about 30 minutes before your walk, you create a powerful metabolic synergy. Caffeine does something very specific in your body. It increases the release of free fatty acids into your bloodstream. It mobilizes the fuel. It unlocks the fat stores and pushes those fatty acids into circulation. But here's the catch that most people miss. If you drink coffee and then sit on the couch, if you drink coffee and remain sedentary, those mobilized fatty acids just circulate aimlessly through your system. Eventually, they get stored again, often as visceral fat, particularly because the cortisol spike from caffeine without movement can actually promote belly fat storage when chronically elevated. What you want is to be right on the edge. You want to feel a slight air hunger, a gentle demand for oxygen that signals to your mitochondria, those little power plants inside